So people, this is Gavin, founder of a newkindofhuman.com. In this video today, I'm going to demonstrate to you how the BBC, which was recently named the most trusted source of news for a majority of people in the United Kingdom, I'm going to demonstrate to you that they actually have a history of corruption. Okay, and they are just as full of shit as the rest of the mainstream media. Now, just to further elaborate on their influence, as you can see on their own websites, they continue to be seen as the most trusted and objective international news provider. So they're basically saying that they are the best news source on the planet. And I'm going to demonstrate to you why not only should they be stripped of those titles, but why we, in the age of information, can and need to render them obsolete and entirely replace them. Okay, first example. The BBC banned communists from not only working at their headquarters, but actually being on the airwaves. Now, this was back when they were allied with the communists against the Nazis. So obviously, saying that they were at war with them as a justification, that gets ruled out. Nonetheless, they still embarked on a massive campaign of censorship. Now, this is a big deal because it's not like today where we have social media and you can share your views with the world. The ruling class had a very strong hold and a monopoly on information, so you had to go to organizations like the BBC. I'm not trying to argue whether communism is a good thing or a bad thing. It's an ambiguous political ideology like other political ideologies, and it means different things to different people. Nonetheless, if you are allegedly an objective news provider, this is censorship, and censorship is wrong. Okay, next example, another case of censorship. The Zircon affair in 1986-87, and this again is the BBC's website. And what I'm going to do, guys, is link everything in the description box below so you can actually fact check everything for yourself, just to make sure, of course, that I'm not bullshitting you. Okay? And in this particular instance, freelance reporter Duncan Campbell, he was working with the BBC Scotland. And we see this as well in many different organizations, not just the mainstream media, but banks and corporations, where people within that structure are actually trying to do good. Okay, there are good people within these corporations and these systems. But the deeper they go, eventually they run into a brick wall. And that is the corruption that is inherent within the system, particularly at the highest levels. And what he was doing was exposing a secret satellite program that was costing taxpayers £500 million. Okay, and this was being concealed from the public. So he was doing a good thing. But when it was discovered, in conjunction with the BBC headquarters, the government went ahead, they raided BBC Scotland's headquarters, they raided his home, and they subsequently took the tapes, they censored them and confiscated them and banned them. Next example. Now this is actually a hell of a lot more serious than just censorship. Censorship is still a big deal, don't get me wrong, but this is a hell of a lot more serious than just censorship. The BBC on their own website, they admit they were involved in a propaganda campaign aimed at the democratically elected government of Iran. Okay, so they justified having that government overthrown. I'm going to give you just a little bit of background on this because it's actually very important. It has a lot of historical significance, and it's where a lot of the tension and animosity towards the West from Iran can be traced back to even till this day. Okay, so this company, Anglo-Persian Oil or Anglo-Iranian Oil, we know them today as British Petroleum Company, BP, they controlled the oil fields over there back in the day. And this is largely because at the time, Iran had a puppet government that was subservient to the Western ruling class. Well, in their first free elections, they decided to go ahead and elect this man, Mohammad Mossadegh. As you can see, he was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1952. He was very popular amongst the people. And one of the reasons why is he planned on nationalizing the oil so that the profits would go to the people instead of a foreign ruling class. And at the time, they were actually controlled largely by the British government, Anglo-Persian Oil. Well, they obviously weren't having that because they're greedy bastards, and they went ahead with the highly illegal Operation Ajax, and through the CIA and MI6. And you know, guys, don't get it twisted. I know you watch Hollywood movies and they glorify these organizations, but what their ultimate purpose is in their role is to serve the ruling class, not the people. So they're either there to preserve or further promote and expand the ruling class's empire. So what they went ahead and did is they actually overthrew him. They put him on house arrest until the day he died, and in his place they installed a brutal dictatorship. Okay, this douchebag over here, the puppet of the West, the Shah of Iran. And what followed therein is actually massive human rights abuses. And like I said, this is a very painful period in Iran's history. But the BBC is showing you how the mainstream media works. Okay, they play on our humanity by saying, oh, there's some evil that needs to be overthrown. And of course, we'll support that because the common person is a good person. But really, what we don't know is what's going on is we are being manipulated by a very small group of individuals who are concerned with their business. So this makes them complicit and makes them a party to those war crimes. It's highly illegal and we should hold them accountable. Next example. Okay, this again relating to war. Now you have to understand, you cannot make a reckless mistake like this. Now, myself, I've been studying the ruling class's methodology for quite some time now. So I know this was not just a mistake. Okay? But for the people who are still relatively naive, they're gullible, and they want to believe the ruling class would never harm them because they've been indoctrinated to believe this. They'll say something like, oh, because this is the original headline. They'll say, oh, but yeah, in very fine print, which nobody's going to even read anyways, it says this image, which cannot be independently verified. Okay, it says it right there, Gavin. Yes, it does say it, but nobody is going to read fine print like that. Now, luckily, the photographer of the original photo, he saw this, and as you can see, he explains he nearly fell off of his chair. Okay, now thankfully he saw it because the implications of sharing something like this is that it can justify war. And war, regardless of what you've seen in Hollywood propaganda films, is a horrible, terrible thing. And the people that are going to get hit the worst are children. So when you think of war, don't think of this heroic douchebag action hero that you see in the movies. You need to think of little children suffering, because that's the truth. Now, this is an organization that is allegedly the most trusted news source in the world. And may I remind you, this is a multi-billion-dollar organization, and they are largely subsidized by taxpayers. Okay, it's the license fee payer money that funds them. So at this point, the citizens of Britain, the common people, are paying to be deceived. And they're not only paying to be deceived, they're paying to be deceived into supporting what is potentially war crimes. Okay, next example. Now, if the last headline didn't convince you of how corrupt the BBC is, I certainly hope that you have the common sense and the courage to admit that this one should. Okay, the BBC spends, once again, £28 million of license fee payers' money gagging their own staff members. So if they're not spending that money on trying to get you to support their war crimes that they are complicit in with the ruling class, then they are bribing their own staff. Okay, what the hell is going on within the BBC that they have to bribe their own staff members, guys? Some of them received £500,000 each. Okay, these are very serious questions we need to ask ourselves. Now, I know a lot of us are overwhelmed. A lot of us are just trying to put food on the table. So we don't even want to think about this. It's exhausting to think about. And I'm not asking you to really take massive action. Okay, all you have to do is just pay attention and then share this information until it gets in the hands of somebody who is in a more privileged position to take a better course of action. And this headline leads me to the final example. Alright, the Jimmy Savile scandal. This piece of shit over here, for decades, was raping and molesting victims, and the BBC knew about it, and they turned a blind eye. Now let's elaborate on that. He abused 72 victims. Half of them were aged under 16, so both of them were boys and girls, some as young as 8 years old. This piece of shit, right here. Now, like I said, guys, I understand it's very overwhelming to consider, to think about these things. But that's not a justifiable excuse to allow something like this to go on. Okay, it's not just affecting adults, it's affecting little children. And if they can't turn to us for protection, then who can they turn to? And let's be very clear, this thing over here is weak. Look at him, he's frail. He's hiding behind the system. And yes, the system is strong, but what is the system built on? It's built on illusions and lies. when you look at the ruling class, when you really look at them, okay, the Bush family or the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or the Oppenheimers, when you look at these individuals, they are not strong. Okay, they are frail, old men. They have no power of their own. Their power is stuff like the illusion of money that they'll manipulate other people with, or they'll use propaganda and they'll play on our human emotions. And what is the solution for a whole entire empire? It's a powerful empire that they have, but it's built on illusions and lies. So there's only one solution, and that's sharing unadulterated, verifiable truth. Now, I realize truth is an ambiguous term, but what I've presented you with today can justifiably be called verifiable truth, because it can all be verified. So like I said earlier, we need to render the mainstream media obsolete. We're in a position for the first time in known history where we can not only shed ourselves of their toxic influence, but we can shed ourselves of the toxic influence of the ruling class. Okay, this is the age of information, guys. We can communicate with one another. And once again, I realize you're not in a position to where you can take massive amounts of action. Not everybody can do that. But never underestimate simply sharing information. Okay, all great change is preceded by awareness. Now in this video, guys, I think I've done a fairly good job at demonstrating to you with what I would call overwhelming evidence of the BBC's criminality. I'm going to link everything in the description box below, and I'll actually put additional information because this is not everything. There's still other instances of criminality on their behalf, but I feel like these paint a thorough picture for you. Now if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's actually the same as my website. The name is anewkindofhuman.com. I know I haven't been active in a long time, but that's going to start changing now. I'm going to focus more on videos like this where I can help spread awareness. And then my hope is that you will help me out and simply just share this with other people, and eventually it will get to the people, and the individuals are in a more privileged position to where they can take positive action. Okay, so please guys, go ahead, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the share button. Thank you so much for your support.